I was hoping to be able to play a little bit of the King's Quest game for this particular show, the new King's Quest that is, but circumstances beyond my control meant I've had to push that back a little bit. I'm hoping to have that for you next week. But not to worry, I found a newish game on Steam that looks really, really great, and I'm really excited about it. Let's get into it.
Oh. Well, that was kind of disappointing.
Konnichiwa, 皆さん。私の名はジェミナイです。そしてこれは Out There Somewhere. Welcome to it in all its 8-bitedness. This is yet another entry in what seems like a myriad of indie games that feel the need to go 8-bit to evoke that retro feel to their game, as evidenced by this game's graphics and its music. I'll go into that in a moment, but first, a couple of stats. Out There Somewhere was developed by a company. Well, I say company, they're more a small group of people from what I can tell from their website, called MiniBoss, and published by Moonshot Interactive Limited, according to Steam. And also, according to the game's Steam page, was said to be inspired by such games as Cave Story, Super Metroid, and Portal. Now, Cave Story I haven't really played much of, if at all, so I can't really speak to that point. But Super Metroid and Portal? Oh yeah, I've played those. Are there elements of those titles in this game? Well, Portal, I can kind of see where they're coming from there, because the main way you traverse around the world, other than moving and jumping, is a device called the teleport gun, which pretty much works in a similar vein to the portal gun from Portal. You fire off a beam, and when it hits a wall, you teleport to where that wall is. As far as Super Metroid is concerned, well, other than the retro look, I really don't know. We'll get back to that, though. The only other notable game that I can discern that was developed by MiniBoss is a game called Towerfall, which was originally released for the Ouya. Now, if you don't know what the Ouya is, don't worry, nobody else does either. Not to worry, however, the game was ported later on to the PS4, PS Vita, and Windows under the title Towerfall Ascension. The only other games they've developed seem to have been made during various two-day gaming events and look to only be downloadable from their website. Now at this point I would move on to tell you something about the publisher, Moonshot Interactive Limited, but I can't. Clicking on their name in Steam to see a list of games they published only brings up one result. Guess which one? And trying to do a Google search on them results in Google going, "Eh? Ittai nani kore?" Out There Somewhere was originally released in February 2012 through the developer's website. Oddly enough, this game doesn't appear to have graced the Ouya's library. It was later released on Steam in 2014, where it costs $4.99. That's where I got my grubby little mitts on it. I have no idea how much it originally cost on MiniBoss's website, because the website for the game just has a link to the Steam download. The basic story of the game is you are an astronaut that crash lands on a planet, and you must find a light orb to repair your ship, and devices known as abandoned cores that will make it more powerful. The game is mostly a puzzle platformer game. I say mostly because it begins and ends with a space shooter section, neither of which really need to be there. I mean, the first one, technically, you could play for as long as you want if you're good enough, but the thing is, it's there to set up the story element of you crashing, so you have to purposefully lose the level so that you can actually progress to the main game. So really, what's the point of having control in it at all? Why not just have a ship come up, blast us, and we crash land automatically and we can get on with the game? So, if you take that first space shooter level away for that reason, by extension, the final one against the boss makes even less sense. So again, neither one of these space shooters sections should even be in the game in the first place. Music is pleasant enough to listen to in some places, and others, well, it's not the worst I've heard. As you might expect with a game like this, the control scheme is very minimalistic. The left and right cursor keys move you in said directions. Z jumps, X fires your teleport gun, and C fires your Gauss gun, which is your offensive weapon. Now you can rebind those three keys, the jump, teleport, and Gauss gun, but you cannot rebind the directional keys. Not that I suppose you'd want to. You can also use a controller, but I didn't really notice any discernible difference between that and the keyboard. If I had to choose, I'd say the controller was perhaps slightly better. The game has tutorials in the first few screens, which cannot be skipped or turned off, and which, like the dialogue with NPCs in the game, appear in the form of text boxes. Adding to the annoyance is the fact that when you press a button to make them go away, they don't immediately respond. This is especially irritating when it's NPC dialogue, as you'll press the button to make it go away, and the delayed response will make you think it didn't work, so you'll press the button again as the box disappears, which in turn makes the box reappear. This happened to me several times in succession on many occasions, as I pressed the button rapidly in frustration. Gaming content, well, there's not much there. Not much at all. According to the game's clock, my first playthrough, in which I beat the game, I would point out, lasted for just over an hour. Now this was with me taking several tries at some of the puzzles, and a crapload of deaths in the first boss fight. I would also point out that I picked up a grand total of 1, maybe 2 of the abandoned cores, and didn't pick up any of the health upgrades, of which there are 3, nor did I pick up the upgrade for your Gauss gun, which I didn't even know it was there in my first playthrough. And I still beat the game with relative ease, save for the first boss fight, and that was mostly due to stupid mistakes on my part. I then did another playthrough, having researched the locations of all abandoned cores, health upgrades, and the Gauss gun upgrade. Even with the occasional screw-up on a puzzle or fall into a pit of lava, the game still clocked me at beating the game in just over half an hour. Half an hour! Did I mention this game cost $5? I'm sorry, but a game of this caliber, with only 30 minutes to an hour of content, would probably be better off as a free game, somewhere like Congregate. Especially when some of the content makes absolutely no sense. Case in point, there was a door I passed by in one particular area of the game, which was closed, indicating your character can't enter it. Alright, so I passed it by, thinking nothing more of it. It wasn't until I started doing a little more digging for information on this game that I happened to come upon something pointing out just how wrong that door was. Not only can you not enter that door, you can't exit it either. That door literally goes nowhere. This game just left me disappointed in a major way. especially when the Steam page mentions Super Metroid as one of its inspirations. I mean, I loved Super Metroid, and when I hear something like that in a game's description, I immediately think it's going to be a Metroidvania-type game with this big, wide-open world to explore, and lots of going back and forth, backtracking, as you gain power-ups and abilities to open up new areas of the map. And that's what drew me initially to this game when I saw it listed as featured on Steam's main store page. Turns out, yeah, not so much. Not so much exploration, no. I'm sorry, this game is not worth $5 or any kind of money. It'd be much better as a free game online somewhere. You spend half an hour to an hour to play it, you beat it, you think, alright, that was a nice little distraction, now back to life. And you go on about your business. But let's forget all that for a moment. Let's say the game was worth the price and I liked it. There's still one concern I have for this game, and many others in fact, which I touched on briefly at the beginning of my spiel, and you probably already know what it is if you paid attention to the title for this episode. It seems like more and more games these days are going to 8-bit, or at least some form of pixelation, nay, almost leaning on it like a crutch when it comes to their design. Indeed, it seems if a game isn't full-on 3D, it's ultra-pixeled. So I often find myself asking with games like this, is the 8-bit really necessary? In other words, does the pixelation add to or enhance the gameplay? Is there some valid reason for the game to look this way? Or does it detract from the game? Is the pixel look there just to be there, and could the game do without it? After all, you can have a game that isn't 3D without automatically defaulting to being super hyper mega pixelated. There's a game I've been playing on and off now for a while called Dust: An Elysian Tale. The graphics in that game are not 3D at all, rather they look as if they're hand-drawn. And yet, it's one of the most beautiful looking games I have ever played. It's great. If you haven't played it, I'd recommend it highly. Want a more popular example? Look at Angry Birds. Yeah, that game. Or that franchise. Every game in that series, with the exceptions of Angry Birds Go, which is a racing game, and Angry Birds Transformers, which is a platformer, kind of a crossover between Angry Birds and Transformers. All of them are 2D games. And they've got, what, about 3,200 billion downloads? So, does the retro look belong in this game? Here's a quote from MiniBoss's website for Out There Somewhere. "We tried to make a game based on what we used to play in the 90s. It has a simple story with retro graphics and music." Okay, so if we take that into account, then the retro style is there to try to evoke a feel of nostalgia. Well, the music is definitely 8-bit inspired, and the graphics certainly do a good job of evoking the look of the Super Nintendo era. It's definitely not the most pixelated game I've seen. I think of games like 10 Million and its sequel You Must Build a Boat, both of which were so pixelated when it came to the character design that they made Super Mario Bros. Look like Super Mario Galaxy. And with 10 Million and Build a Boat, I feel like they could have absolutely done without the pixels, and the games would still have the same effect and be just as enjoyable. But with Out There Somewhere, I feel like the sort of 8-bit, 16-bit hybrid look they've got going on probably does a better job of evoking the feel of nostalgia the developers were looking for than a 3D or even straight 2D look would do. So in this game, yes, the 8-bit is necessary. Now, at this point, I should mention that I've looked at screenshots for the other games listed on their website, and they all seem to have an 8-bit or 16-bit look about them, and I fully realize that's probably a necessary evil for them, from a monetary standpoint. They're a small group of people, as I've said, and probably don't have the funds or wherewithal to design 2D or 3D games. But even assuming they could design games like that, Out There Somewhere would probably still benefit more from the retro look that it has now than any other kind of look. Regardless, that doesn't change my opinion on the game. I still think it has no business on Steam asking $5 or any other kind of price. If it were longer, or even if the content it had was much more entertaining, I wouldn't mind it so much. But after playing the game twice, and not even logging 2 hours of playtime between the two playthroughs, all I was left with was an overwhelming sense of, oh, that's it? Well, minasan, as you could probably tell, I've done things a little differently this time around with regards to my narration. I tried doing a live commentary as I played the game, like I did in the previous 2 episodes, but found I didn't really have much to say. So I just recorded the game footage, and wrote down my thoughts separately. And that's what you're hearing now. And hopefully I was able to convey my thoughts to you more coherently. I may stick with this method, I'm not sure yet. I'll probably still attempt to do live commentary in future games, and if I feel I've said enough to keep you interested, I'll use it. If not, I'll do like I did here and record my thoughts separately. Let me know in the comments what you like better. And also comment if you'd like to see me do a Let's Play of a game featured on the show, though obviously not this one, because what would be the point? Or if you'd like to suggest a game for me to play and give my opinion on next. If you like the video, then I invite you to click the like button and share it with everyone you know, everyone you don't know, even people that don't exist. We don't leave anyone out on this show. And also be sure to please subscribe to my channel so that you can stay up to date on all my videos, and follow Gemini Does Games on Facebook and Twitter at facebook.com and twitter.com/Gemini Does Games. 次回まで、私の名はジェミナイです。ありがとうございました。さよなら。